Some conflicts are as old as civilization itself. And today, we're diving into one of the big ones, a story about two completely different ways of life, a clash that has been echoing for thousands of years. We're talking about the farmer versus the herder.
For millennia, humanity was basically split between two worlds. On one hand, you had the farmer. Their entire life was rooted in a single plot of land. And on the other, you had the herder, the pastoral nomad, who was always on the move, following their flocks across the huge grasslands of Africa, Europe, and Asia. Now, when these two worlds met, it sparked an absolute epic of conflict and change. And believe it or not, to really get this massive global story, all we need to do is look at the tale of just two brothers.
Okay, so let's really break down this fundamental split. You've got settled life versus a nomadic existence. And look, these weren't just different jobs. Oh no, they were entirely different realities that shaped everything from how you built your family to the very gods you prayed to.
And this table really shows just how deep those differences went. I mean, think about it. For farmers, home is permanent. That allows for specialization, right? You get artisans, priests, soldiers. Society gets organized by class and job, and your wealth is in the land. But for the nomad, home is a tent you can pack up and move. Pretty much everyone is a herder. Your identity isn't your job, it's your bloodline, your clan. And your wealth? It's mobile. It walks on four legs. Even their gods were different. Farmers looked down, revering the earth and water, while nomads looked up, revering the fire, thunder, and sun in the vast open sky.
So with worlds this different, it's really no surprise that when they met, it wasn't always peaceful. For thousands of years, the borderlands between the farms and the steppes were this constant zone of tension, a little bit of trade, and very often outright war.
So what exactly pushed the nomads into settled lands? Well, it was never just one thing. It could be something like climate change, drawing up their grazing lands. Or maybe they were getting pushed out by even tougher nomadic groups behind them. Sometimes, a new piece of military tech, like the war chariot, suddenly gave them a huge advantage. Or, hey, maybe a settled kingdom just looked weak and corrupt, an easy target for a charismatic leader looking to make a name for himself. It was this constant dance between desperation and pure opportunity.
And the results of these clashes? They were all over the map. Sometimes the nomads would raid and just get pushed right back out. Other times they'd conquer and rule as a separate elite class. In some famous cases, like the Hyksos in Egypt, they conquered, they ruled for a while, and then they were eventually kicked out. But often the most powerful and lasting outcome was synthesis. The nomads would conquer, they'd settle down, they'd intermarry, and a completely new culture would be born from the fusion of the two.
So how in the world do we wrap our heads around a dynamic that shaped empires from ancient China all the way to Egypt? A conflict that seems so huge, so impersonal. Well, sometimes the best way to understand a massive historical force is to see it play out in a single human-sized story. And we see it all play out perfectly in the story of Cain and Abel. This ancient narrative from the book of Genesis. It isn't just a family tragedy. It is the perfect archetype, the perfect miniature version of the massive historical conflict we've just been exploring.
I mean, it begins by setting up the exact split we've been talking about. You've got Abel, the herder, the keeper of sheep, and you've got Cain, the farmer, the tiller of the ground. Two brothers, two worlds living right next to each other.
The conflict ignites over an act of worship. Both brothers bring an offering, but God accepts the herder's gift and rejects the farmer's. The text doesn't explicitly say why, but the result is instantaneous. Cain is just consumed by this bitter anger and jealousy.
And that rage, it leads directly to the climax. The farmer kills the herder. The settled man destroys the nomad. It's the very first murder in the Bible, a brother killing a brother, that symbolizes the violent, tragic potential at the heart of this ancient rivalry.
But the story leaves us with this huge, lingering question, right? The one that sparked Cain's fury in the first place. Why on earth was his offering rejected? Seriously, this question has puzzled scholars and theologians for thousands of years. What was so wrong with the fruit of the ground that Cain brought forward?
Well, there are a few compelling theories. Maybe it was about Cain's heart. He was just going through the motions, giving out of obligation, not real faith. Maybe it was the quality. The text says Abel brought his firstborn and his best, while Cain just brought an offering. Some theories suggest a blood sacrifice was what was really required. Others even argue that because the ground itself was cursed after Adam's sin, anything from it was kind of a tainted gift. But notice the common thread here? They all, in one way or another, point back to Cain's inner state, his attitude.
But the story's real impact doesn't actually end with the murder. It's what comes next, a single, sharp question that has pretty much defined our whole understanding of human responsibility ever since.
When God confronts Cain, asking, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain's response is a lie, followed by one of the most famous, cynical questions ever asked. "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" It's just this total, defiant rejection of any responsibility for his fellow human being.
And you have to understand, the original Hebrew here reveals just how deep his failure is. The word Cain uses is shomer, which means a guardian, a watchman, a protector. So he isn't just asking if he's supposed to babysit his brother, he is cynically asking if he has any duty to protect and care for him at all. With that one question, Cain rejects the very foundation of human community. And the story's powerful, unspoken answer is a resounding, yes, yes you are.
Now, the story of Cain and Abel sets this really dark pattern of sibling rivalry and violence. But what's so fascinating is how the rest of the book of Genesis seems to grapple with this curse. And slowly, generation by generation, it starts working toward a totally different outcome.
You see this pattern of rivalry just repeat itself constantly. Sarah has Ishmael banished. Jacob literally steals his brother Esau's birthright. Joseph's brothers sell him into slavery. Every one of these stories echoes Cain and Abel. But then, something begins to change. The arc of the book starts to bend towards redemption. Isaac and Ishmael, the two rivals, come together to bury their father Abraham. Esau, the one who was deceived, embraces and forgives his brother Jacob after years apart. And in the final climactic story, Joseph's brothers repent, and Joseph tearfully forgives them.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? The curse of Cain isn't broken by somehow avoiding conflict. It's broken when people finally choose to take a different path. It's broken when they choose responsibility and reconciliation over jealousy and violence. They finally answer Cain's cynical question with a resounding yes. And so this ancient story of a simple farmer and a herder leaves us with a question that is every bit as urgent today as it was thousands of years ago. It's a question that echoes through every conflict, from small family squabbles to huge global disputes. Are we our brother's keeper? The story suggests that how we answer that question defines not only who we are, but the fate of our world.